credit card rates north of 20%, right as savings dry up and Americans are adding on debt.
The total credit card balance is $887 billion.
Credit card balances especially have hit a new record at the end of last year, nearly $1 trillion. That's not only the highest ever.
First quarter of 2021, credit card balances totaled $770 billion, compared with $890 billion just a year earlier in 2020.
Debt is a big problem for people in America. About 15 years ago, when the recession happened, many lost their jobs and savings. But after a while, things got better, and people's debt even went down a bit from 2008 to 2012. Then, however, the pandemic messed things up again. As a result, many are struggling to pay their debts and take care of their families, and some are even losing their homes or going bankrupt. Being in debt in America is not a new or necessarily a negative concept. Debt enables us to purchase homes and cars, send our children to college, and acquire things we can pay for later. Capitalism is primarily based on credit extension and the debt that follows. However, credit card debt in the country has reached concerning numbers. Moreover, given the terrible economic prospects, high inflation, and rising interest rates, households find it more challenging to sustain their way of life. Thus, in this video, we're going to talk about the credit card debt crisis in America and its effect on the economy. Before diving into the subject, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss trending economic topics. According to the New York Federal Reserve, people in America owed $14.56 trillion in debt by the end of the year 2020. This is a $414 billion increase from the previous year and almost $2 trillion more than the highest amount ever recorded in the third quarter of 2008. The main types of debt that have been increasing are home loans, car loans, student loans, and credit card debt. In addition, debt unrelated to housing has increased more rapidly, with a 51% increase since 2013, compared to a 24% increase in mortgage debt. Americans owe $986 billion on credit cards, surpassing the pre-pandemic high of $927 billion. At the same time, American household debt hit a record $16.9 trillion by the end of 2022. According to the website Wallet Hub, people borrowed a record-breaking $100 billion using their credit cards last year. That's a lot of debt, considering the fact that America is not the leading country in terms of share of credit card owners. As of 2021, Canada, Israel, and Iceland are leading the chart with over 82, 79, and 74% respectively. And things got even scarier in the previous 3 months of the year when almost $86 billion of credit card debt was added. Again, that's the most considerable increase ever recorded. This is a chronic issue overall, where we as a society have gotten more used to using credit for everything, said Michael Reynolds, a certified financial planner and owner of Elevation Financial. Credit card companies are incredibly good marketers, and credit cards have become the norm and a way of life for everyone. Because credit cards are fast and easy to use, it's not surprising that a lot of Americans owe money on them. A survey found that 30% of Americans owe between $1,000 and $5,000, 15% owe more than $5,000, and about 6% owe more than $10,000. That might not sound like a lot, but it means that 14 million Americans have more than 10 grand in credit card debt. Almost 40% of Americans think they can repay their credit card debt within a year. But there are still many other people who believe it will take them 2 years or more. About a quarter of them think it will take 2 years, while 5% assume it will take 5 years. Unfortunately, there are also some people, around 3%, who don't think they'll ever be able to pay off their credit card debts. According to NerdWallet, prices are rising faster than incomes. In the past year, median household income has grown just 4%, while the overall living costs have jumped 8%. Buying now and paying later might lead to more outstanding debt for many. About 1 in 5 Americans have used this service in the past year. People are worried about their finances in the coming year, with nearly 7 out of 10 Americans feeling anxious. The biggest concern is having to take on more debt to cover necessities, followed by the fear of having to pay higher interest rates on existing debt. Because of recent Federal Reserve rate increases and higher revolving credit card debt, households are paying more interest on their credit card balances. On average, families that carry credit card debt will pay $1,380 in interest this year, and the amount may go up if interest rates continue to rise. The recent banking crisis and the collapse of the largest regional banks in America, SVB and Signature, will have a negative effect on borrowing. What we're seeing right now, in terms of stress of the banking sector, will likely have amplifying effects on the deterioration of household finances, said Gregory Dacko, chief economist at EY Parthenon. We are likely to see an environment in which banks are more cautious about their lending, especially smaller regional banks, and that will further exacerbate the softening that we were already seeing. Ordinary Americans refuse to change their spending habits, despite wages not catching up to inflation. At some point, this will backfire, and borrowers will have to pay more than now. For instance, the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis reports that in December 2022, median nominal wage growth was 6.1%, and the Consumer Price Index, CPI, inflation was 6.4%. We can take the difference between these two series to create an aggregate measure of real wage growth, which adjusts for the level of inflation. Furthermore, Bankrate reveals some extremely concerning news about the ability of households to pay off their credit card debt. At the beginning of 2022, only a little over half of Americans had emergency funds more than the credit card debt amount, which means that almost half of Americans struggle to pay their debts. Experts say there are a few reasons people are racking up more debt on their cards. The main reason is that the cost of living is increasing. People are spending more money on things like groceries, rent, gas, and utilities than they used to. Inflation has been happening for the past 8 months, but it's been getting slightly better lately. In February, the price of goods people buy rose 6% compared to last year. That's not as bad as January, when it went up more, and it's still a lot better than the worst month, June, when it went up 9.1%. However, it's still way higher than what the Fed estimates is reasonable, which is a 2% increase every year. When the Federal Reserve raised the interest rates to reduce inflation, it impacted credit card debts. Banks typically raise the interest rates they charge their customers when the Fed increases the rates. As a result, if you have a credit card with a variable interest rate, it will become more expensive to carry a balance. For example, in November last year, the Fed's interest rate increases were meant to fight inflation. But they also led to higher average interest rates, APRs, for people with credit card debt to decades record high of 19%. Another reason credit card debt is soaring is because companies collaborating with banks and credit card firms offer deals and discounts to lure customers. In a consumer society, purchasing more than one can afford is easy. However, when the household files for bankruptcy, the whole economy will end up there, as there will be no money left to produce goods and services people were buying before. So we can already hear that credit card rewards are heading toward a crisis. Thirdly, young Americans are spending a lot more money with their credit cards than ever before. The report by Bankrate showed that a lot of young people nowadays are relying more on credit cards to buy things that they need. In fact, almost half of the millennials and Gen Xers who took part in the survey have credit card debts that are bigger than their savings or emergency funds. Bloomberg reports that Gen Z is accumulating credit card debt at a faster rate than any other generation. They are also the only group with more accounts that are overdue, which could harm their credit scores. This means that if inflation continues to rise and young borrowers don't manage their debts more carefully, it could lead to generational bankruptcy. Lastly, forecasts for the economic future are not optimistic, as the Fed expects the banking crisis to create a recession this year. Given their assessment of the potential economic effects of the recent banking sector developments, the staff's projection at the time of the March meeting included a mild recession starting later this year, with a recovery over the subsequent 2 years, the meeting summary said. Thus, Americans should be prepared for a worse economic condition, as there is no short-term solution. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and feel free to share your opinion on credit card debt in America in the comments section below.